What's up, ADOS and our allies? You know who it is, Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Friends of ADOS TV channel, bringing you those ADOS hot topics and making the case for reparations, a Black agenda in exchange for our vote this election cycle. Follow in, family. Got lots to talk about. Lots is always happening in the ADOS life and as it turns, right, family? Yes, today we're going to get all into it. I'm going to just banter about some of the Facebook grab bag posts that have been going on throughout my live while the people file in. It's been a very interesting 24 hours since Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, made her transition. And we're going to talk about it because lots of ADOS are very mixed in the way they feel about her passing. So we're going to talk about that. But in the meantime, there's other things that are happening that I feel are worth mentioning that are going to play a big factor in this election cycle. And the ADOS movement's stand on Democratic down ballot and why it's important to break the back of the establishment. This may be our last opportunity to do that. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how that's going to work. But there were a few things that were happening in my posts that I want to share about in my feed before we get into the topic of Ginsburg passing and the impact that's going to have on the ADOS at large, the lineage, and what that means, in fact. Does it really make that much of a difference or not? And so we're going to talk about that with respect to the Supreme Court and with respect to this upcoming election, okay? But some of the things that have been going on in my feed, I want to share about Kamala Harris. Someone posted about our Democratic down ballot strategy working in opposition to get Biden and Harris the top of the ticket. And this is the same thing that was being used against the ADOS. Well, we weren't the movement the last election cycle. We just formed as a movement last year. But yet and still, when Hillary lost, we were blamed for that. Well, I'm here to tell you that it is never the ADOS's fault. We're 13% in this country. The white women who promised to go out there and vote for Hillary went behind the polls, went behind the curtain, and voted for Trump. That was one of the things that happened. But this election cycle, what's happening is what I believe, and I've been taught this by some of my comrades in the movement, that there is a pecking order. And the pecking order is white man, white woman, black woman. And how I believe, and we'll see in 6 weeks if my theory is correct, that Biden choosing Kamala, which is already wrought with a bunch of issues that we've already been into on the show, is what is going to give Trump the election. Because if you've ever read They Were Her Property, you will come to understand that Jane Crow rode on the ADOS harder than her white male counterpart. And there is no way in the world that I believe they're going to overcome racism in the name of Black Lives Mattering to elect Biden, which puts Kamala Harris right in line for the presidential seat. I don't believe that Biden is going to make it 4 years. I believe that he's going to get out in 2 or less, and that Kamala is going to take that over, and the Dems are setting her up, or setting the party up, to have 12 years, 3 consecutive terms as a result of Biden bowing out. And what I'm trying to relay to you guys is you have to understand pecking order. You have to understand Jane Crow to understand that there is no way in the world the very white women that would not even vote for Hillary as the president are going to allow Kamala Harris within one generation to become president over them coming president first. It's not the pecking order. So we will see in 6 weeks how that works out. But one of the things I know is that no matter how the outcome of the election, turns out, it doesn't really matter. ADOS will be blamed for Trump at the top of the ticket. Now, our job is to deliver a Democratic Congress to protect the 42% of ADOS who rely on government assistance by design, called institutional systemic racism. And we don't mind if Trump takes the top of the ticket and hugs it out with a Democratic Congress for the next 4 years. It is our role, our intent to lock and gridlock government so that we can put pressure on the Democrats to deliver on reparations, prayerfully the next election cycle. We are asking for ADOS to vote Green Party or blank at the top of the ticket. You're free to fill in whomever you want. Our goal is to defeat the Democrats at the top of the ticket because they're not offering reparations and a Black agenda in exchange for our vote. They're just now looking at HR 40 and they've not included any of our edits. The ADOS movement clearly needs more time to continue to put pressure. You see the kind of pressure we have put on the government, on this political race, with making reparations front and center of every topic in every news outlet. That is the ADOS movement at work. The revolution is being social mediaized, whether you know that or not. We have been at this for a long while, studying politics to become more astute. What's up, Joseph Prevost? Thank you for joining the live. Thanks for that insight. Absolutely, you're very welcome. But yes, we have been working diligently in the trenches to impact politics all throughout the country. And not many of you are aware of what our work has harvested. What you see now with reparations being, this kind of silent, steady drumbeat is because every day we are in the social media spaces, really, really pushing on that agenda to force the government to give what is owed in the trillions over multi-generations. Now, understand that reparations is a marathon, not a sprint. So we're not expecting to get it this election cycle. It's not the only thing we desire. Visit ADOS101.com to see the Black agenda. What we're saying is to the Democrats, it's not okay for you to continue to use us as the mules of the Democratic Party without offering tangibles in exchange for our vote, akin to how you do other groups. They're giving away the farm to the immigrants. And of course, the corporate billionaires. They're getting everything while telling ADOS, we're not doing anything specifically for you. Nothing will fundamentally change. Well, I venture to say that nothing will fundamentally change because we've proven election after election in putting out their white fires that we'll put out the white fires. We'll allow you to make Trump our boogeyman. Let's totally erase the fact that we've been under the boot of the oppressor for over 400 years in this country. We were enslaved by the Spaniards prior to being enslaved by the Europeans. I'm just now learning all of this stuff that we've been here since about 600. That's a whole nother show. I'm not going to delve into that right now because I only have an hour or less with you. But the bottom line is the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing, expecting a different result. And right now, with Kamala on that ticket, even if you just look at pecking order, the Democrats are giving it to Trump. The Democrats give it to Trump when they don't offer ADOS a Black agenda, at least something in exchange for our vote. Okay, class-based policies don't fix race. Just remember that, family. And with that said, let me jump into Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG is what they call her. I'm not here to disparage the work that Ruth Bader Ginsburg put into the Supreme Court. I give her major accolades for doing so. I haven't had a chance to read every case that she was a party to in favor of ADOS. But I do know that she was a force to be reckoned with as she dissent on many cases before some of the most white supremacist men in the high court. Okay, she fought that battle, and the only other woman is Sotomayor. And from what I can tell by some of the footage I've viewed about her record in the Supreme Court, her background, she's a Russian Jew. They migrated to this country, and she was able to make it to the Supreme Court through her education and the thing of this nature. But let me help you understand something. That happened with a lot of white Europeans. They were the ones granted reparations and tons of property and the like, while we were robbed of all of our chattel slave labor. This is why the fight is so imperative. Ginsburg, as a Russian Jew, was able to make it because this country was set up to help her make it, to help her be a force to be reckoned with. I don't know of any female ADOS that have been on a fast track to the presidency like a Kamala Harris in one generation, when we've been here over 400 years and built all the wealth that Kamala and her group eat from in this country. I don't know of a Supreme Court justice born of American descent in chattel slavery that has been on the Supreme Court. So when you talk about Ginsburg and her success, understand that she was set up for success. This is what this country did for white European immigrants. We built it, they gave it away, which is why we're demanding cash reparations in the trillions over multi-generations. Because when you deal with programs, you see what the government is hell-bent on doing. They give with the left and take with the right. As we've been reading in my book series, Prejudential, and I have another couple of books that I'm going to add to the list that I'll share with you about closer to the tail end of the show. Fire books that Dr. Carr recommended for us to understand white nationalism and Black interest. We really have to be super careful about what we're doing and show up to the polls this election cycle. It's more critical than ever because the white nationalists are looking to set us back to Jim Crow. In the laws, in the Supreme Court, the whole 9 yards. That battle, I believe, has been lost. Not sure if Ruth, understanding that she was sickly, why she would not step down and get out the way so that Obama, she could retire and allow Obama to put someone in her place. Another woman, ADOS preferably, could have gone in that place and we wouldn't be sitting in this situation 47 days from election with Trump having the advantage to put yet another conservative on that Supreme Court. That's going to impact our children for the next 40 years or more. So I don't get why she stayed. Maybe she wasn't sick then. I don't know. But, something is awry because I also want to share with you about how 39% of the Democrats were in support of every one of Trump's Supreme Court nominees. So you have to understand these politics, and that's what the Friends of ADOS channel is here to do. That is what Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, Karen's show, who else? Dr. Shauna Etienne. All of these shows are out here in the YouTube space, Facebook space, to impart this political wherewithal because we've got a lot of catching up to do to get beyond identity politics that mean tethering us to the bottom as the permanent underclass in the country our ancestors built with their lives. So kudos to Ginsburg. May she rest in paradise. Job well done for white women. We are, as we always have been, benefactors through the crumbs that trickle down. When you dissent on issues relative to women and women's pay on the highest court in the land, that could favorably impact us. But the bottom line is our salaries have never been commensurate with white women. So to me, if you were really for ADOS women, that would have been your fight, to make us even equal to you in pay, as you fight for your equal pay with white men. Okay, so that's one way in which I believe she was not for the ADOS woman and instead was working against us. Another way in which I believe worked against us was for her to be a staunch advocate on women's rights. Now, I know you say that women should have the right to choose, and I'm not discounting that. But what I'm saying is we've lost millions of babies with these abortion clinics being set up in our communities. The abortion clinics aren't set up in white communities. So I get the reasons why women, Black women in particular, choose to abort, almost like a form of birth control. I believe that birth control should be used in lieu. What's up, Rashawn Graham? Thank you for joining the live. Kunta Nayamiba. Thank you so much for joining the live. Rashawn Graham said truth. People don't like to lose power is why she didn't step down. Absolutely. But to me, if you're about civil rights, right, and you want to see a real democracy outside your own interests, you step down. You retire, because now we're in a position. The first couple years with Obama in office, we had a trifecta, meaning we were at the top of the ticket. We ran Congress. So if you're really, really concerned about Black people, you get out the way. But anywho, I digress. I was sharing about ways in which I believe her stance on women's rights to choose was hurtful to Black women, just as it is hurtful for Bill and Melinda Gates to be over in Africa pushing abortion rights to African women. This is about eugenics. And she was one of them. And I quote, hold on. I'm in my notes, y'all. Just give me a second. I gotta toggle back and forth. This is a quote from her. Okay. Frankly, I had thought at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Dr. Gibson, thank you for joining the live. Dr. Gibson says, it was also about ego. She wanted Hillary Clinton to pick her replacement. This is why I argue that there needs to be term limits for Supreme Justice. Absolutely, Dr. Gibson. Your facts. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There should be term limits. I just, so like I said, back to my earlier point, Joseph said the white child will be taught how to rule and the Black child trained to be ruled. Training is defined as teaching a group what to think rather than how to think. That is what has happened to the ADOS, okay? And so you have to understand that her stance on abortion rights hurt the ADOS. Right now, Hispanics are 56 million to our 35 million in this country. Now, folks want to always argue they don't vote in the same proportions as we do. It's just a matter of time. We were at 90% last election cycle. They were like at 65%. It's growing every election cycle. And as you have the Democrats and the Republicans fighting for their vote, now you're making a pathway for them to get more politically engaged because they're giving them the farm. Every time you look up, Joe Biden is talking about something with DACA and doing stuff for them in the first 100 days. Just go over to their platform and you'll see. They want to give repair to the Indian Americans. They've received a lot of repair already. As a matter of fact, many of them who owned us, the Cherokee and Seminole Indians who owned us, refuse to this day to give the Black Seminole and Black Cherokee Indians the reparations that are theirs by right of the Constitution. So for him to they're always trying to find ways to conflate our reparations with other groups. And that's why we want cash repair. Let us buy our land. Okay. Let us pay for our education. Let us pay for our health care. Let us pay for our homes. I don't need you doing all of these initiatives under the people of color moniker to give it all away to the immigrants to continue to tether us to the bottom and to do all in your power, Democrats, to make us the permanent underclass in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Shauna Kim, welcome to the live. South Carolina, 9-0 vote, Comcast v. Allen, Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981. That was Ginsburg. Thank you, Shauna. That was on my list of ways in which Ginsburg hurt ADOS. So let's just go right there. Shauna is absolutely right. Byron Allen brought a suit against Comcast that based on our 1866 civil right law to sue for discrimination. And the Supreme Court voted unanimously to modify its interpretation and kick the case back to the lower courts, where Byron Allen had already won twice in the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court. Yes, it's Supreme Court. I got you, love. Thank you so much. SC is Supreme Court. She's absolutely right. That was another thing that harmed ADOS. We don't need, and let me tell you what I mean by a different interpretation. Meaning racism had, prior to this Supreme Court ruling, racism was part of the reasons why you could file a claim and sue for discrimination. Now they've added the but-for clause, meaning you have to prove that racism was the exclusive reason why you were singled out of access to white capital. Ginsburg participated in that decision. Joseph says, we are our ancestors standing in the shoes of. You better know it, brother. You got a justice claim. And we are leaning in. Like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But what's the strategy, family? We need chess, not checkers. And continuing the two-step lesser of two evils shuffle to our demise, I don't think that's a solution. I'll remind you that ADOS is 200 liquid to African immigrant, 60,000 liquid to Asian Indian, 245,000 liquid here in Southern California. ADOS is $8 liquid in Boston, $11 liquid in Miami. All the other groups are outpacing us in terms of our liquidity, in terms of our liquid assets, and we have zero wealth. We don't have to wait to 2053 to get to that. COVID expedited us to zero wealth. We stand at 60 million people laid off due to the COVID. 60 million. While the billionaires net 35 billion so far, they keep sinking trillions into the stock market to prop it up. If you're in a position to buy stocks, do so, but I don't know how. I mean, a few of us are unicorns and can do it, but by and large, our people are they're less than 700 billion to live on. Okay? They don't have it like that. So yes, Joseph says mass extermination. Kunta says over 20 million ADOS children have been aborted since 73. Over 20 million ADOS children have been aborted since 73. But you all want to mourn the passing of Ginsburg. Thank you, Kia, for joining me on the live. God bless you, doll. Yeah. You all are mourning the loss of Ginsburg. 20 million. Can you imagine? If those 20 million babies, mothers and fathers could have afforded to keep those children, we would be at 55 million strong in this country. These people were, Ginsburg was a eugenist. Do I have to repeat what I just read to y'all for the people in the cheap seats? What she said? Look it up. I'm going to read it again. It bears repeating. Oh, Lord, I just jumped. Give me a second. Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth and particularly growth in population that we don't want to have too many of. That's ADOS. 20 million babies have been aborted since 73. Thank you for that, Kunta. What's up, Robin Felix? Thank you for joining the live at work, but I'm watching as much as I can. I love you, Sis Star. Thank you. You can always watch the playback, love. Rashawn says we need to be defined, ADOS or DOAS. No more people of color or minorities. Separate from using them definitions of us. Absolutely. People of color means doing for everyone but ADOS. ADOS is up on the games. And that's why they disparage us and try and COINTELPRO us, family. You must get with it. And of course, Shauna shared about the recent civil rights case, where now we have to prove that racism was the sole reason we were locked out of access to white capital, which is our capital. Okay. Denise Jarrett, thank you so much for joining live. Glad I made it. Thanks. Jay Boogie, no, that dead Jewish judge was a friend of white gays. Well, I'm not disparaging the gay and abortion-loving liberals. Yeah, well, listen, we don't have to disparage other groups to make the point that ADOS was left out of the agenda for the Honorable Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, that's all I'm trying to stress. I'm not here to disparage other groups. This fight is with the government, who is solely and exclusively responsible for tethering us to the bottom. As the bottom caste in the country our ancestors built with their lives. So 2 ways in which she grossly harmed ADOS. Okay, I'm not trying to disparage her. I'm just trying to make my point before folks, oh my God, you're disrespecting the dead. No, I gave her credit for having access to the things ADOS still don't have access to. She had an access and a pathway to the Supreme Court in a way that we don't. Thurgood Marshall? Anybody else? I don't know. I'm fairly new. I'm a guppy in politics. I'll be the first to tell you. I cram a lot in to try to, make sense of it. I don't like talking over people's heads. I like learning it and translating what I've learned to help you get an understanding. But everything I say can be fact checked. Okay. You guys just have to do that kind of work because it's just an hour-long show and I'm at 28 minutes. Okay. So let me tell you another way in which I feel was hurtful to the ADOS. Colin Kaepernick. Look it up. Let me tell you, and I'm quoting her. You can look it up. I had to share with the brother that he called it fake news, and I pulled a CNN because folks ain't Thurgood and Thomas. Well, Thomas, yes, you're right. Thank you, Shauna. Thomas he's like a black-white supremacist to me. I don't really count him as ADOS. Yeah, there's only been one ADOS to my knowledge on the Supreme Court, but oh, no, I see. Thomas is ADOS, but he's a black white supremacist doing the oppressor's bidding as far as I'm concerned. There's lots of those in office, unfortunately, sad but true. We have a lot of work to do, fam. So basically, one of my comrades says, I'm not apologizing. I'm going to go with my first response. If you're 80 anything, trying to tell the descendants of the people who built the nation that you and your people acquired unimaginable wealth in, how to respond to oppression, you are racist at your core. I didn't ask her permission to quote her, so I'm not sharing names, okay? Because I didn't have the time to ask to quote my ADOS family. Out of respect, I'm not quoting names, but I'm reading from what they posted on Facebook. This is a Facebook grab bag mail, okay? Whatever. Angela Nirvana presents the way I see it. Friends of ADOS TV. It's kind of a bundled show, okay? Just bear with me. Let me go back. If you're 80 anything trying to tell the descendants of the people who built the nation that you and your people acquired unimaginable wealth in, how to respond to oppression, you are racist at your core. ADOS elders have a saying, you too old to be so wrong. Yep, you may be a champion for other folk, but not my people. If you're trying to dictate how we reject our oppression. Her reaction means that after all the progress she made for her people, that she didn't see my people as her people too. Ooh-wee. My ADOS family is fire. So Kaepernick's, she said, and I quote, Kaepernick's decision not to stand for the Star-Spangled Banner to call attention to racial injustice is dumb and disrespectful. I love y'all black and strong, Kunta. You know I do. Senselamir, welcome to the live. She called Kaepernick and people protesting stupid. I just read it. It's dumb and disrespectful. But y'all mourning and crying crocodile tears for a Russian Jew who migrated here and made it to the highest court in the land, while your people are $200 liquid in LA, $8 liquid in Boston, $11 liquid in Miami. Y'all have got to catch up. We got 6 weeks. If y'all need to review every archive in my YouTube and Facebook, Yvette, Carnell, if y'all did that much, you'd catch up and understand why a protest vote is absolutely needed right now. We're at DEFCON 4. Anywho, Kaepernick said, it is disappointing to hear a Supreme Court justice call a protest against injustice and oppression stupid and dumb. At the end of the day, the flag is just a piece of cloth, and I am not going to value a piece of cloth over people's lives. Okay, let me read a few more of my intellect's comments. I want to have a balanced discussion. What's up, Johnny Morant? Thank you, Johnny. ADOS, Triangle ADOS for joining the live. She only hired 2 black people as clerks in her entire tenure. Don't tell me you didn't have more qualified clerks in DC. Howard University, what's up? Law school. That's another way you can tell that these people are racist. You've got to understand through Prejudential family. This should come as no surprise, but if you're new to the show, it may shock you. Lineage therapy, Shauna says, absolutely. Joseph says, we need mental health care now. Yes, we do. We're traumatized as a people. Yeah, amen to Kat for calling her out. But folks want to cry crocodile tears over a race soldier. You have to get the book, They Were Her Property, to understand the Jane Crow that Ginsburg and the rest of her ilk really are at their core. You just must. Okay, 2 or 1. I'm not sure, Dwayne Allen, welcome to the live. Okay, so I don't know what that means. You guys have to give me some, we were bred. Oh yeah, we were bred. Kill Callie, thank you for joining the live. We were on breeding farms. Why do you think there's so many different hues of us with so many different features? This is the masters doing. Raped our women. Castrated, hung, and lynched our men. And you want to sit up here as a Supreme Court justice and weigh in. And this is why I find that to be problematic based on what one of my brothers said, whose name I will not say. He had some very sound things to say. He's a lawyer. Once again, I'm not saying names because forced even with family members. Absolutely. I mean, the crimes against ADOS were so heinous. It is one of the reasons why I have to do the show every other day, because it's a lot on me emotionally to take in. It's a lot to unlearn the lies, family. But the ADOS is resiliently putting in that work. Did you watch the Antebellum movie? Welcome to the live, York 2700, Sister Ella. Not yet. I'm going to get to y'all's comments because I'm at oh my God, 34 minutes and we still have our story time. Okay, I got to tell y'all about Andrew Johnson. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so this is where I take a little issue with what my friend wrote here, although I love him dearly. But he says justices and judges' jobs are not to be activists or to actively do things for people. They are there to supposedly interpret and uphold the law in the interest of the people. The state legislative branches in Congress are there to make law for the betterment of those whom they represent. I fail to see why people are holding her to the standard of an elected official in the legislative branch of the government. If truly interested in an accurate and fair assessment of her, then read some of the decisions rendered while Ginsburg served on the court that pertain to race directly or indirectly. And he lists a few there. Adirondack v. Penalties, 1995, racial discrimination in general contracting dissent, Grutter v. Bollinger, 2003, racial diversity in college admissions concurrence, Gratz v. Bollinger, 2003, parents involved in community schools versus Seattle School District, 2007, racial diversity in public schools dissent, Illinois v. Wardlow, 2000, stop and fricks dissenting in part, Florida v. JL, 2000, unlawful frisk in search of a black minor male, opinion, Burgess v. Tompkins, 2010, Miranda rights dissent, Herring v. United States, 2009, unreasonable searches and seizures dissent. Her dissents and service on the bench mattered to us, especially being there with a bunch of racist Bush appointees and Clarence Thomas, who were doing all they could to uphold the racist laws of states and Congress, whether we acknowledge it, dispute, or refute it. And more importantly, we should be bringing awareness to what has recently occurred with 45 appointing and the Senate recently filling the federal appellate courts with ultra-conservative justices. We better pray that appeals that need to be heard by the Supreme Court actually make it there, for they are not required to hear all the cases. It's discretionary. These circuit court justice appointments are for life. Term limits, like Dr. Gibson said. And yes, I concur with my brother in part. These cases, especially in the instances where she dissent, this was in fact helpful to ADOS. I've not read all of these decisions that I just rambled off to you, but I do think it's worth exploring. I think it's important to have a balanced idea of whomever we're putting on the chopping block as being against ADOS. But I do need us to understand that at the end of the day, these laws don't work for ADOS because the laws aren't made for ADOS. And until you get an ADOS who's full-chested about ADOS in that Supreme Court to pick up the mantle and to fight these conservatives, there will never be any kind of dissension to the degree that we need in the high court for the welfare and the transformative politics necessary for ADOS to finally become American in America. It's not going to happen. And that's my point in the exchange. So I do want to read one more comment on the issue before I get into the reading and close out the show. Oh, there's a couple things I want to read. Hold on. Just a second. Ooh. Oh, where is it at? Oh, IJ West. Here we go. Oh, I didn't mean to say his name. Hi, IJ. I hope you don't mind me reading your repost. I get so many. What's up, Joe Hankins? Thank you for joining the live. Okay, the Supreme Court is compromised when they are appointed by their ignorance. Absolutely. I can't argue there. Okay, this is a repost. It's false that RBG and Thurgood Marshall voted in lockstep or wrote concurring opinions and dissents in support of one another. Okay, that was something that the one I just read, you had me redact his comments. Okay. So I had to redact that because he said that in his earlier quote, but he asked me to make the edits and I did so. But let me read it to you because this was, some other people may think this is true as well. So let me just spell it. It's false that RBG and Thurgood Marshall voted in lockstep or wrote concurring opinions and dissents in support of one another. They never served on the court or anywhere together. Marshall resigned in 91 and Ginsburg was appointed in 93. She dissented against the VRA and voted in favor of a ruling that benefited Black women, but so did other justices. She called Kaepernick's protest stupid and later retracted her statement by saying she shouldn't have spoken on it. But her initial expression was the truth. I don't understand Black folks sometimes and how we defy and over-exaggerate certain figures as if they did some significant stuff for us as our heroes because white media told us how wonderful they are. She was compared to a Black hero in justice, Marshall, but called a feminist icon, which means white women were her priority, not Black women. It is revisionist history to try making a dissent of hers to be all for Black women. Okay, so those are a couple of different purviews, and I think it's important for you to read up on Ginsburg and reach your own conclusion. But I'm settled on mine. Now, I want to talk about how this impacts the upcoming election and whether or not we should defer from our protest vote at the top of the ticket. Understand, family. Yes, I'm glad he asked me to redact it too, Joe. Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to get to your comments momentarily. Why it's imperative for us to stay on our square is because, like I mentioned prior, we're at 35 million to Hispanic 56 million. You see the Democrats and the Republicans fighting for immigrant rights harder than they are any agenda. Nothing for ADOS that's transformative. And let me help you. Given our income and wealth position in this country, we need transformative politics right now. Okay? We absolutely need transformative politics. Trying to make everybody equal is still keeping ADOS on the bottom. Class-based policies don't fix race. So they're fighting right now for that immigrant vote because they've allowed these immigrants to overtake the country to deny us the access to our reparations and Black agenda. They don't want to pay the reparations. So what they do is they bring in more immigrants to suppress our wages, to suppress our civil rights, to lock us out of affirmative action intended to make us whole post-slavery. Okay? Immigrants work for capitalism. Okay? So they're expecting ADOS, who built all the wealth they benefit from, to eat the cost of slavery. That's what's happening here with both parties. And they're weaponizing immigration against us to get that done. So what happens is when you allow Biden and Kamala at the top of that ticket and deliver a Democratic Congress, the only one suffering at the boot of the oppressor is ADOS. And I believe it's time to socialize our oppression. Perhaps that will incite not just the Democratic Party, but even the constituents to get on board with Black Lives Matter. Not Black Lives Matter, with the reparations. Black Lives Matter too. What I'm trying to say is Black lives don't matter if we can't be well off economically. If we're tethered to the bottom, you can't tell me Black Lives Matter. You can't march in the street and not march for reparations. It's an oxymoron because being poor makes us targets in our communities. So I don't believe you if you're just marching for Black Lives to Matter when it comes to government sanctioned execution and not our right to be made whole financially. Okay? So I don't know. This is why what has happened with Ginsburg takes away any and every excuse to deliver a trifecta, a dim top and a dim Congress. Because Everybody kept saying, we've got to deliver a trifecta so that we can have the next Supreme Court pick. Well, Ginsburg, selfishly, in my opinion, me speaking, stayed in that office longer than she should have, but not long enough. We are 47 days from the election. And Trump has already said he's going to replace Ginsburg. Okay? So the bottom line is it doesn't change the protest vote. It means we must lean in. The Democrats are going for the Republicans and the immigrant vote. They don't care about your vote because, number one, we've conditioned them to believe that they don't have to care. 60 years of being the mules of the Democratic Party. Lesser two evil two-step shuffle to our own peril. And that's another reason why we've got to upset it. We've got to deliver a Democratic Congress, and I guess it would be Trump top of the ticket to lock government down so that the ADOS can continue to do this work. And we've got to be committed to that because the only wealth we have is our vote. It's the only commodity we've got. We don't have any money to be at the table. Okay? So understand that this is what we must do in order to protect the ADOS, in order to socialize our oppression. Otherwise, we will be the only groups suffering. And let me tell you another reason why it doesn't matter. Because I've got an article here shared by one of my comrades. An article here shared by one of my comrades. Give me a second, it's loading. The Democrats voting for Trump-appointed judges and why. Okay? The Democrats are voting for his appointees by 39%. They're not shutting it down. So why would we be beholden to them if 39% of Democrats are actually greenlighting Trump's appointees? Why would we do that? Why would we miss the only window we have remaining to make a protest really, really matter? When they are, in fact, voting for his nominees. Joe Manchin III, the Democratic senator from West Virginia, isn't in an enviable position. In 2016, President Trump won by a 42-point margin in his state, which currently has a Republican governor, a Republican senator, a Republican-controlled legislature. I don't want to read all that. I got a book to read. Look up the article. Here are the Democrats voting for Trump appointed judges and why. I wanted to read my comrade's comment. I was trying to get to it. Basically, he was sharing about this atrocious record of the Democrats supporting. Just a second, guys. I was trying to find his comment. It was brilliantly stated. Is this it? Here it is. In fact, it is a quote. In fact, an average Democrats vote to confirm Trump's nominees roughly 39% of the time. Even Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who ran their races for president by arguing they were each the respective progressive futures of America, vote to confirm approximately 1 out of every 10 of Trump's nominees. And he begs the question, is this the resistance the Democrats are talking about? Seems like they're maintaining white supremacy and their position in it to me. With that said, it's a perfect segue into Andrew Johnson. You guys have to understand that the whole entire deck is stacked against us. We have no friends. And these are short chapters. I want to read them, and then I'll be commenting in between, and then we can read a few comments and bless you guys out, okay? Andrew Johnson, 1865 to 1869, was a Tennessee senator who tried to keep his state from seceding along with the rest of the South after Abraham Lincoln's election in 1860. His motivation clearly was not to end slavery, as he owned 8 human beings himself. He railed against the power of the slave-owning aristocrats, but when he replaced Lincoln's first vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, in 1865, and then became president after Lincoln's assassination, he made it clear that he believed in government of, for, and by white people. Isn't that what's true of our current government and our current Supreme Court? And like I said, they have removed the barrier and the excuse to continue the lesser two evil two-step shuffle all the way to our peril, because Ginsburg died 47 days before an election, and Trump has already said he's putting one of his in there. And I can almost bet you, to secure the white female vote away from any empathies towards Black Lives Mattering, that it will be a white woman. Moving on. White still rules, Kill Cali. Johnson had his own presidential ambitions and had hoped to be the Democratic Party candidate in 1860. Stephen Douglas won that contest, but Johnson did his best to promote Southern slaveholding interests despite his loss. He argued to his fellow Southerners that they might be able to keep Lincoln in check should he attempt to do more than stop the spread of slavery. Me speaking. This reminds me of Joe Biden on the Senate hearing floor, pushing for the crime bill, very enthusiastically. Strom Thurmond's boy, segregationist Jim Crow Joe, riding hard for the 94 crime bill, which Bill Clinton instituted, as we applauded his ability to play the saxophone and made him the first Black president as a result of that. Now we have close to 1 million Black men in prison, more than all the women locked up throughout the world. And during Clinton's tenure, they were in the overflow. He left the country in, what's the word I'm looking for? Not a deficit, but they were in the black, like excessively, because of what they pay the private prisons to incarcerate us, the new slavery. He had a surplus. I think that's the word I'm looking for. He had a surplus. Look at what a surplus was. And draw the distinction, the analogy between that 94 crime bill and 3 strikes that was instituted, and how the states were turning a profit, and how the government was giving them $25,000 and more per bed to lock us up. Look it up for yourselves. This is what this statement just reminded me of. His plea for unity was an effort to keep slaveocracy on top in American politics. He knew that secession would mean the end of slavery. He ended up having to flee from his state, but as the only Southerner to keep his congressional seat after secession, he put himself in a powerful position in the Lincoln administration. Lincoln appointed Johnson as a military governor of Tennessee in 1862. Johnson seemed to continue his pro-union efforts as he demanded loyalty oaths from local officials and shut down newspapers supportive of the Confederacy. But he also allowed slaveholders to search contraband camps for their runaway property. He even refused to provide tents or other shelter in the contraband camps in the winter of 1863. He asked Lincoln to exempt Tennessee from the Emancipation Proclamation, and the president agreed, leaving Black people enslaved in a state that was mostly in Union hands. He eventually had to take steps toward emancipation, but in so doing, he managed to get compensation for Union slaveholders in the amount of $300 for every manumitted man who signed up for the service. The nature of Johnson's wartime relationship with Black people played out again after Lincoln's assassination delivered him into the presidency. The Freedmen's Bureau Bill of 1865 called for providing lots of 40 acres each for rent and eventual purchase by the newly freed people. When Union Generals William Sherman and Oliver Howard sought to act on the Freedmen's Bureau legislation by confiscating property abandoned by Confederates to provide for the formerly enslaved, Sherman and Howard were Black, ADOS, slaves. They were slaves. Well, they joined the army. They joined the fight to get access to their freedom. And when they sought to act on the Freedmen's Bureau legislation by confiscating property abandoned by Confederates to provide for the formerly enslaved, Johnson voided all of these proposals. Frederick Douglass was correct when he said, whatever Andrew Johnson may be, he certainly is no friend of our race. On February 7th, 1866, Douglass led a delegation from the Convention of Colored Men to meet with Johnson. Their goal was to secure a commitment to give Black men the vote and legal protection to exercise it. In response, the president bragged about being a slaveholder and claimed to have made great personal sacrifices for the people he owned. He expressed concern about poor whites who he believed suffered while Blacks were free. And he ended the meeting by suggesting that Black people leave the country. His constant undermining of Reconstruction became too much for the radical Republicans to bear, and Johnson faced impeachment in 1867. The vote failed to get 2/3 majority needed to remove him, and he served out the remainder of his term in office. During that time, he set the stage for the battle against true emancipation, eviscerating Reconstruction policies wherever he had the chance. Johnson vetoed a Freedmen's Bureau bill and a Civil Rights Act and returned confiscated land to former slaveholders. Americans hungry for hypotheticals should not be asking what would have happened had Lincoln dodged the assassin's bullet. Instead, they should wonder what would have happened if his successor had been a true champion of human rights. Lincoln's survival might have meant colonization for 4 million people. Do you understand that as he emancipated us, he was trying to colonize us in Haiti? Emancipation might have been more meaningful and more effective if Johnson had not been so much like the man who had chosen him as vice president with respect to his attitudes toward Black Americans. Hence, our issues with Kamala Harris, Callie's top cop. That's on other shows. I'm almost out of time. I'm going to read this short chapter on Ulysses S. Grant and comment. 1869 to 1877, the man who came to be known as Ulysses S. Grant was born, Hiram Ulysses Grant, to a staunchly abolitionist father, Jesse Root Grant. The elder Grant, for a time, lived as an apprentice in the home of the tanner Owen Brown in Deerfield, Ohio. Owen Brown was the father of John Brown, the man whose attempt to spark a slave uprising at Harper's Ferry led to the Civil War and indeed the end of slavery. Jesse Grant's anti-slavery sentiments were well known, but his son Ulysses married into a Missouri slaveholding family shortly after his graduation from West Point. Once he was mustered out of the army in 1853, Ulysses lived among his in-laws and promptly forgot his abolitionist upbringing. According to the manumission papers of the man William Jones, Grant ignored his upbringing further by entering the slaveholding business himself. Grant made up for the sin of holding humans in bondage by waging total warfare and ending the practice once and for all with the military defeat of the slaveocracy. It was war that ended slavery, not abolitionist opinion or Lincoln's oratory. Despite being raised by an abolitionist, Grant voted in 1856 for pro-slavery Democrat James Buchanan over John Fremont, the Republican whose little-known Fremont Emancipation would free slaves under Union Army control before Abraham Lincoln issued the better-known Emancipation Proclamation. In 1860, Grant was not yet eligible to vote in Illinois, his new state of residence, but he favored Democrat Stephen Douglas over Abraham Lincoln. Grant's attitudes typified those of many white Americans in the North. They may have been anti-slavery, but only because it was out of sight and out of their minds. If given the opportunity to profit from free labor, they would likely act as Grant did. However, Grant's father would have none of it and refused to help his son when he struggled financially. When you are ready to come north, I will give you a start. But so long as you make your home among a tribe of slaveholders, I will do nothing. Kudos to his father. Grant rose from failure at farming and in a variety of business ventures to redeem himself in his return to the Army during the Civil War. He chose to side with patriots over traitors, but like his commander-in-chief, Abraham Lincoln, he was more concerned with saving the Union than with bringing about emancipation. Confederate Commander Robert E. Lee may have surrendered to Grant in April 1865, but the Confederacy refused to die. After his election and inauguration in 1869, Grant's efforts to protect Reconstruction met with mixed results. He supported legislation that gave him the right to declare martial law and suspend habeas corpus. He established the Justice Department in 1870 to help enforce Reconstruction-era protections of the newly freed population. The success of Reconstruction was always in question, as white Southerners did not take their defeat lying down, and white Northerners inevitably grew tired of fighting for Black people. Doesn't that sound familiar? We still have some whites fighting and marching and protesting Black Lives Matter. But they sure talked about how weary it was after about a week. Not as many marching anymore. Back to the text. Almost done, family. Bear with, and I'll get to your comments and we can pray out. The white revanchists knew that Grant and the rest of white America had no interest in keeping up the fight for Black people's human rights in the long term. Grant was the first post-Civil War president to make the claim that he supported legal rights for Black people. Yet he contradicted himself in opposing what became known as social equality. Denunciation of the term was kin to supporting segregation. And Grant made clear where he stood during his second inaugural address in 1873, and I quote, "Social equality is not a subject to be legislated upon, nor shall I ask that anything be done to advance the social status of the colored man, except to give him a fair chance to develop what there is good in him." Pull yourselves up by your bootless straps. Atrocities such as the 1873 massacre in Colfax, Louisiana, in which more than 100 Black men were killed on Easter Sunday by a mob of whites determined to oust Republican officials, prove this to be true. Let me jump in there. Now, they were switched back then, right? So Republicans of yesteryear are the Democrats of today. Same bird, two wings of the same bird. Only 9 of the 97 men indicted were put on trial. 9 of the 97 men indicted were put on trial, and only 3 were convicted. Their convictions were overturned in an 1876 Supreme Court case, United States versus Cruikshank. The court ruled that the enforcement acts used to protect Black voting rights applied only to state actors and not to individuals. Whites who opposed Reconstruction knew that they had only to continue committing acts of terror in order to overthrow the small amount of progress made by Black people. What's changed? What's changed? We're not winning, family. We are at George Floyd, 8 minutes and 46 seconds because of this very statement I just highlighted. Whites who opposed Reconstruction knew that they had only to continue committing acts of terror in order to overthrow the small amount of progress made by Black people. Still going on to this day. The Colfax massacre was widely denounced, but the culprits were never punished. Isn't this true of the race soldiers called the cops, spelled with 3 Ks? You know, the slave patrols that now have a badge and can come into Black communities to keep us under control through terror, through government-sanctioned execution. And y'all want me to vote for Biden and Kamala, who have been instrumental in that? Who have yet to say anything about dismantling private prisons, dismantling qualified immunity? We're going to continue to pay for our people to be executed twice in our taxes to employ them and for government-sanctioned executions of us for being Black. As was often the case in Reconstruction era atrocities, they managed to avoid jail even when apprehended. Grant left office under a cloud of scandal over actions carried out by political cronies. The bigger scandal was the end of what was left of the feeble federal effort to protect Black people from terrorism. Rutherford B. Hayes was the beneficiary of Grant's languor. And tune in Tuesday night for Rutherford B. Hayes and James Garfield. Oh, let me go to your comments, family, before I pray us out. I'm reading from Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents by Margaret Kimberly. Pick it up. You have got to see that we have no friends, never have. And we have to fight differently if we want a different result. I'm asking everybody to join in the protest vote and shut the government down for the next 4 years. Let Trump take the top of the ticket and Democratic down ballot to deliver a Democratic Congress to gridlock it. I don't know what other strategy to suggest, given that nothing is new for ADOS, no matter who is in office, especially if you're not running on a platform to remedy us of this terrorism against ADOS. Okay, let me go back to your comments and we'll get out of here. We're not. Okay. Let me go back. Oh Lord, y'all really been busy. Thank you for your comments. Okay, I'm at a minute. I'm at an hour 10. Okay, I'm gonna go back to York 2700. He wrote, did you watch the Antebellum movie? You guys need to watch the Antebellum movie. I have not, but I will. Thank you for that recommendation. Johnny Morant Jr. Oh, thank you for sharing the link. The link. Ruth Bader Ginsburg can learn something from Brett Kavanaugh opinion. Yeah. How in the world did he get cleared for the Democrats? Anyway, Sister Ella, women's suffrage movement was not a protection for Black descendants of enslaved people. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It had nothing to do with us. Shauna Kim, mother with son, hence the word MF. Ooh-wee. She's talking about the breeding farms, how we were bred with our own sons. Hence the term MF. Shauna, thanks for dropping that. That just gut punched me. Kill Kelly, thank you, sister. You're so welcome, my loves. Friend, blessings to you, Queen. Thank you, sister Ella. Thank you all for joining the live. Those in the chat and those not on the chat, I appreciate your tuning in to learn. We're learning together, family. Kunta says they rep white people all around the country, all around the world. They can't have babies like we can. Hence why the abortion clinics are in our communities. This has nothing to do with their women having abortions. You know, by and large, they're against that. It's for us to abort our babies. So they oppress us through institutional systemic racism and plant birth control centers, abortion clinics in our communities. 20 million babies, Black babies, have been aborted since 73. It's probably higher because I remember reading that number a few years ago. I don't like white people's. Help me. I'll help myself. Kill Callie. That's rough. It's hard to love our white counterparts, even those who aren't directly responsible for their privilege, but benefit from it and stay silent about our oppression while not fighting for us to be whole. They are complicit. So it's very, very difficult not to have a level of disdain for white people at large. We can all have one-off experiences where white people are lovely. This has nothing to do with loveliness. It has everything to do with what is right and what is just. And how dare you use our ancestors as in heinous chattel slavery, the worst of its kind in the known world, and tell us no to reparations when we made cotton and tobacco, namely, king in this country. And it is how you built your wealth. It's how you passed down wealth, through how you entitled each other, through how you gave each other repair, through how you gave each other land, education. And every time we pulled ourselves up by our bootless straps, I must have counted 30 Black Wall Streets in a map someone sent me, where massacres were occurring and they were tearing and burning down our Wall Streets everywhere. The terror that has been inflicted on ADOS, and we're on the bottom, immigrants and everyone faring better in this country than us, lets you know the disdain white people have for the very descendants of ancestors who built all the wealth all of them eat from. We are the legs at that table, and we're fighting because we don't have a choice but to fight. Those of us that are fortunate enough to still have an income, it can disappear tomorrow because you're Black and you simply don't have the complexion for the protection. So none of us are free until all of us are free. And this is why the ADOS movement fights, and why we're asking you to join the fight wherever you are. We need all hands on deck. Lots of work to do. What does ADOS mean? American descendant of chattel slavery. I throw in the chattel. but American descendants of slavery is what it means. It's who we are. Because this country loves to flatten blackness. But like I said, we're 6% total black population here in Southern California. And yet, I think that's a different number maybe. Someone shared with me that black immigrants make 3% down here. I don't believe that. We've gone from 16% representation down here in Southern California to 6%, which includes, to me, it's flattening blackness because you include African and Caribbean immigrants in that number. And yet we're 44% of the degreed. So say we're 3%. Say we're the whole 6%. We're 44% degreed ADOS here in Southern California. But due to the discrimination in the hiring practices, we're only 6% of the private sector. I still have to give you the number on the public sector. It's not much better as compared to other groups, whites and immigrants. So we want the distinction ADOS, and if you haven't filled in your census, you only have 2 more weeks. It's over on the 30th. We implore upon you to get in the fight by writing yourself in as an American descendant of chattel slavery. Use the acronym ADOS because we're pushing for the distinction in the census, because down here, we're 200 liquid to African immigrants, 60,000 liquid. So when you lump us all together under black or minority or people of color, we totally lose sight by design that 90% of ADOS are struggling. 90% of the blacks in this country who are ADOS or less by now. I want to say maybe we're about 86%, and to immigrations, 14%, black immigrants, 14% over here. Okay? You can mask our failure when you lump us all together and say collectively we share $2.3 trillion. This was everything before COVID is what I'm citing. It's before COVID. I'm sure it's less than that now. But you mask our failure when you call us black or African American, because of that 2.3 trillion, okay, loosely here, 10% share of that 3 trillion, 10% share 2.3 trillion. 90% of us share ADOS, 700 billion. So this is why we have to do away with the identity of black, people of color, minority, African American. Wasn't Obama, in fact, an African American? His father's Kenyan, his mother's white. He descended from slave owners, as did Kamala. She's East Indian Brahmin caste is what she descends from. That's white in India. And her father was Indian Jamaican. And he brags in one of his articles about descending from slave owners in Jamaica. So when you flatten blackness because of hue, you wipe away lineage. And lineage is what matters. Lineage is tied to our justice claim. Okay? So that's why we demand the distinction ADOS, and we're fighting for it on the next census. So we can see how we're really doing in the numbers and prayerfully get more resources channeled to us. They've done a real job on us with this POC, by POC, minority thing that they like to lump us all under. Them laws, Sister Ellis says, them laws are to protect non-ADOS and LGBTQA. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it was intended to, affirmative action was intended for us. But they made white women minority, they made immigrants minority, LGBTQIA minority. Once all the entitlements are done and we're last in line, I don't even know if there's any crumbs left. Probably not. Kunta, her true through pattern was we are dumb. I don't really know what that means. I think there may have been a typo there. Her true thought pattern was we are dumb. He's referring to Ginsburg. Yeah. Yeah. That's how most of them feel at their core. They'll smile in your face about it, but they're all white supremacists. Even a lot of black white supremacists in office. The Supreme Court, Joseph says the Supreme Court of the U.S. has always used the prevailing white political climate as a criteria for dealing with questions of race. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But like I said earlier, it benefits capital to have someone tethered to the bottom. So bringing a bunch of immigrants to suppress our salaries and to suppress our capacity to get jobs while giving them set-asides to build businesses in our communities. And then blame us for black-on-black crimes and murder of one another. When you've created this within the community. Let's be clear, LGBTQAI, non-black people. Okay, she's talking about the clear people. Sister Ella, thank you for the clarification. Joe says, okay, the Supreme Court is compromised when they are appointed by their ignorance. Yep, absolutely. But if the Democrats are approving his appointments, what are we to do with that? They approved Kavanaugh. Kill Kelly. There are a lot of black billionaires. These people need to start to buy farms. No, there aren't, darling. Kill Kelly, those are lies. The media wants you to believe we're winning, but we're not. Jay-Z, Oprah, Kanye, they're not billionaires. No, they're not. Lies. They want to deceive you to make you think we're winning, so you'll stop fighting for your reparations and black agenda. That's called the decadent veil, masking the failure of the majority of ADOS in the country. They are the unicorns, and they're not billionaires. That's a lie. We need our own economy. Yes, we do. We can't do it without reparations. Sister Ella says that's that K-Hive ideology, making moonlighters our saviors. We have to tighten up. I've never heard of it referred to as that. But absolutely, we must tighten up, and we must insist on ADOS for ADOS, full-chested. Speaking of which, vote Tamara Johnson-Shealy. She is running for U.S. Senate, Georgia. She's the only ADOS for ADOS running this time around, and we need to help get her elected. So visit her at tamaraforgeorgia.com. Donate, support, volunteer. She needs all of it, all hands on deck. Oh, and it's possible because there are quite a few ADOS on the progressive wing that I'm seeing make it through. Cori Bush is one of them. And they had little to no money for their campaigns, but a lot of enthusiasm on the ground. Well, Tamara Johnson-Shealy has been getting in her RV, a rental, so she needs help with that rental and gas, going to rural Georgia for that vote that's been neglected. We can actually have our very first ADOS in Congress if we push and give everything we can to help her get elected. She should have retired under Obama. Yeah, this is how you know they don't give a damn. Not about the constituents. How selfish of you to stay in office when you had an opportunity to step down, and then Obama could have at least had 2 nominees on the Supreme Court. I don't support, Kunta says, I don't support BLM as an organization because the founder goal is truly LGBT. Yeah, I've been hearing that. I've got to read more about it. No, I support Black Lives Matter in its concept until I can learn more. Johnny says she selfishly stayed in talking about when men need to be in the room when Obama offered to let her help make the pick. This is why it's going to be 6-3. Wait, is it 6-3? Somebody help me out. Who's left in the Supreme Court? I thought it was only on the Democratic side. I thought it was Sotomayor and Ginsburg. Do we have a third? Help me out if you know the answer to that. This might be even more dismal than 6-3. 8-1. Is it going to be Sotomayor, the only Democrat, once Trump makes his nomination, once he appoints his nominee? Will that, I don't know. Somebody help me out with that. Okay, let me scroll down. Almost there. We are being used. We've always been used as the mules for the Democratic Party. I get it to a certain point, but now we're still doing that now in 2020, amidst all that's happening to continue to terrorize and oppress Blacks in this country, ADOS in this country. We're just pawns to them, says Kilcally. You're right. Joseph says NCCFR, National Coalition of Churches for Reparations. Contact at nccfr.org. Thank you, Joseph. Absolutely. Hunter says Trump was pouring much money into the Dems' pockets over the years. Yes. Yes, he was. He sure was a Democrat at one point. It's easy to forget that, as hateful and racist as he's behaving these days. For his whole tenure, it's just been, he's been off the charts. I mean, I get pandering to your base, but damn, the Dems are the KKK. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think more so now, the Dems are Republicans in Democratic clothing. The Republicans are definitely the KKK. Okay. Can you forward the articles from tonight? Sure. I'll be sure to do that in this feed after I conclude the show. White rule, that man Biden is racist. They're all racist, okay? Kunta says, when Clinton left office, America had a $128 billion surplus. Thank you, Kunta. $128 billion surplus when Clinton left office. And you don't think the passing of the 94 crime bill had anything to do to contribute to that surplus? Okay. They took us from cotton tobacco fields and into the factories in the North. Oh, yeah. We've got an excellent book read coming at the top of the year. It's going to take us 4 months to get through this. I divided it into sections. Facebook doesn't allow me to share it until a week out, but I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to share it in the feed. This is called The Warmth of Other Suns, and it deals with the epic story of America's greatest migration. That was us from the South, where they weaponized our labor in the factories to suppress the whites' salaries, like they're doing the immigrants to suppress ADOS salaries. Uh-oh, I jumped too far. $128 billion surplus on the backs of Black men being in prison. Luther says no to Jim Crow Joe and KKK Harris. Ouch on the MF. Wasn't that a big ouch? Sister Ella says 60 plus massacres across the U.S. The research by the Equal Justice Initiative. Wow. Also know that there was a massacre per week for 75 years of ADOS during Jim Crow. A lynching a week to keep you terrorized from doing any better. They could throw you in jail after our emancipation for refusing to work, the sharecropping, for refusing to sharecrop. You were considered a vagrant if you didn't work for negative money, because just like the music industry, they would tag on all your expenses. So you were never going to work your way out of slavery. That's what came after we were emancipated during the era of Jim Crow. And then they would throw you in jail. Convict leasing. They would lease you out the very plantations that you refused to do sharecropping on. We lost 50% of our men in those prisons over convict leasing. They didn't give a damn about you anymore because you were no longer their property. I like the necklace. Oh, thank you. Tea Time 11. Thank you for joining the live. Taj Marie, thank you for joining the live. AW, yes, it will be 6-3. Oh my God. Taj Marie agrees, 6-3. Thank you guys for joining the live. Johnny Morant Jr., Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer. Wow. Wow. Okay, family. I have to look them up. I don't know that much about Supreme Court, but all I know is that the very excuse many Democrats were using not to disrupt this election cycle has been removed from Ginsburg passing. He is going to do with that Supreme Court what he is going to do, and he will be doing it prior to the election. Now, there are a number of ways that the Democrats can stop him. I shared that in my feed. But are they really that invested? I don't know. If you can let Kavanaugh through, I don't know. And if 39% of you can vote yes and approve Trump's nominees, I don't know how invested you are in ensuring we get someone fair on that Supreme Court. So look at the Green Party. ADOS Angela Walker, trucker and single mom, is running on that ticket. She's ADOS, and she's been in talks with the ADOS. We know that the Green Party won't win. We're weaponizing our vote in the same way the Democrats weaponize immigration and Republicans against us to say no to our reparations and Black agenda this election cycle. We're weaponizing the only commodity we have, our vote. And we do hope you join us. Visit gp.org. And remember to visit tamaraforgeorgia.com to help support, volunteer, and vote for her. It's a lot going on, family, but we've got to be self-interested. Oh, before I go, I want you guys to pick up these books. Shout out to IJ West, who shared with me about the Karen Hunter show, where she had Dr. Carr, law professor at Howard University. She had him on her show to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and he recommended 2 amazing books that we have got to read. Okay, we've got to read these books, family. The first one is called White Nationalism, Black Interest. White Nationalism, Black Interest. And the second one is called Pan-Africanism in the African Diaspora. Both of these books are by Ronald Walters. And I agree with him, family. We must educate ourselves to act responsibly as ADOS. We also need to be thinking long and hard on making a second citizenship in Africa. Now, I know, we're down with the Pan-Africanists, but I've heard from a number of people in my movement that Pan-Africanism on a global scale is far different than the Pan-Africanism here in this country. So, if Trump doesn't win, they're talking about a huge war in this country. I'm just saying, when you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Order those books. Joseph says, our vote or death cannot be taken for granted. ADOS is the cost. You better know it, fam. We forget the Dem and Republicans are in the same bed. Absolutely. They are. They're protecting white capital, which is ours. So I don't say stray from our fight for reparations, but we as a people have got to learn to multitask. We have got to look out for our best interest. And getting these 2 books, I will roll out the dates. I think I might move Darity's book up, since many of us know that book. Yvette already is doing a cast on the 24th. Okay, she's doing this book on the 24th. I was going to do this book on the 2nd. But with these 2 entries, I may move that date out a month so that we can order those books and be well read. So I'll be sending out the schedule, and noting it here because Facebook won't allow me to promote within StreamYard more than a week before showtime. So I'll be hitting it hard on Angela Nirvana feed in the Facebook space, and you'll see it advertised in YouTube. And I don't know if Periscope will advertise it in advance. I think so, they will. Okay, with that said, family, we're at an hour 35. I'm long-winded today. I will see you guys Tuesday with another rendition of Prejudential and ADOS Hot Topics. Angela Nirvana presents The Way I See It. Until then, family, I need to put a covering over us for my peace of mind, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOS and its allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. And with that said, family, you make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening. Go out in these streets and act like you know who you are. I'll see you Tuesday night around 5 or 6. And know that I love you black. I love you so strong. Peace, family. Have a great evening. Thank you for watching. Share, share, share.